Shalom everybody. In today's video I would like to address a very difficult topic, that is the nature of this world and why everything here dies and has to be eaten, etc. So with that being said, let us do a deep dive on the nature of this reality. Let's begin. Now in 138 Openings of Wisdom, the Ramchal states the following: because this was the whole reason why the Tzimtzum took place, in order to bring into existence a place for evil. Now the Tzimtzum refers to the restriction or the withdrawal. It was explained in a previous video entitled The True Nature of Reality that the nature of this evil should be understood as the opposite, and that the restriction or the withdrawing of the light was in order to bring forth evil, or the opposite of what God is. Many different examples were given in that video as to how we can understand the nature of these things, a link of which I will leave in the comment section down below. Now, it is highly encouraged you view that video before continuing on with this video. As for the length of the subject matter, it will give all of the prerequisites in order to fully understand what is getting ready to be discussed. Regarding the nature of evil, and an example, the nature of the restriction was to bring in a place for evil, we find that the numerical value of the word Ein Sof is the same value as Hasod Samael. As we can see here in Tikkun 43, Ein Sof, which is a numerical value of 207, is the same numerical value as Hasod Samael, being 207. Now, from this level and every other level within inside of the restriction, they all were infused with error, because the opposite of a perfect existence is a flawed existence. The opposite of a unified singularity is a limited multiplicity. The opposite of being eternal is being temporary. The opposite of being in control is not being in control, and so we have choices or free will. The opposite of not making any mistakes is making mistakes. The opposite of being in an eternal static state is being in a constantly changing state. The opposite of being unbegotten is being begotten, etc. Therefore, it must be understood that all of the realms, both higher and lower, were created with the same flawed imperfections, for the realities exist in varying different levels, in varying different stages and varying different phases, yet each of these are operating in inherent error and infused with evil. Thus it is written by the prophet Isaiah, "Lift your eyes to the heavens above and to the earth below, and behold, the heavens will pass away like a vapor, and the earth will pass away like a garment." We learn from this that the nature of the upper things and the lower things are to pass away. For what reason? It is because they are conceived with errors. Now the nature of these errors extends from the highest worlds unto the lowest worlds. That comes to include all of the story of creation. It is known that the husk precedes the fruit, and so we find that the klipa precedes the tikkun. We see that darkness was before light, as it is written, Vayomer Elokim Yehior Veyehior. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. An example, darkness existed first. We find that Cain existed before Hevel. We find that the land of Canaan was before the land of Israel. We find that Esav was birthed before Yaakov, Ishmael before Yitzhak, etc. This comes to teach us that the first worlds, or the highest worlds, are entirely klipothic. This coincides with what our sages stated in the Talmud. There was an incident of a young child who had a near-death experience. Some say he fell into a coma, and he went up into the upper worlds. And when he returned, he awoke, and his father asked him, what did you see, my son? And he said, Father, I saw a reversed world, a world where the lower things were above and the higher things were below. His father replies, my son, you have seen a perfect world. This story relates to us that the upper world is an inversion of this world, which coincides with what the Ramchal just stated, and the reason why Ein Sof is the same value as Hasod Samael, because primordial evil was birthed. Therefore, everything that has to deal with creation has to deal with this evil, as we can see the Zohar hinting to in the following words. Rabbi Yehuda expounded upon the verse, Come and behold the works of Elohim who has made desolations in the earth. He said that this text has been explained, but if the world would have been created by Yud Ke Vav Ke, a name indicative of mercy, then it would have given earth a firm structure. But since it was created by the works of Elohim, which is judgment, a desolation, a wasteland, he has made desolations in the earth. Because during the acts of creation, the name Yud Ke Vav Ke is not used at all, but rather the name Elohim is used. And through all 7 days of creation, the name of Elohim is used. And everything inside of this creation is vanity and error. And so it says in Kohelet Rabbah the following. Vanity of vanities, or futility of futilities, literally breath of breaths, or vapor of vapors, an example, something empty of substance, utterly futile. Koheles cries out and says that everything created during the 7 days of creation is futile. The 7 references in the verse to Hevel, futility or vanity, the word Hevel appears 3 times in the plural Hevelim, each of which connotes at least 2, appearing twice, making a total of 7. It corresponds to the 7 days of creation, and this accordingly is spoken by Rashi here. So Hevel, Hevelim, Hevel, Hevelim, Kal Hevel. These are 7 vanities, which are the 7 days of creation, and everything that is brought into existence during the 7 days of creation is futile and vanity. Regarding the Zohar, it states in Bereshis A, Let us create man, part 1. A wife is not permitted to do anything without the permission of her husband. Of all the buildings that were in the way of Atzilus, that is, in the world of Atzilus, Abba would say to Ima, let it be so-and-so, and immediately it was done by Ima. It is written, and Elohim said, let there be light, and there was light. And said alludes to the owner of the building, Abba, who said to Elohim, let there be light. And so Abba uttered the words, and the craftsman completed the task immediately. And this was the same for every edifice, namely the grades that came into being by way of Atzilus, where Abba would say, let there be a firmament, or let there be luminaries, and Ima would complete everything in an instance. When he reached the grades of separation, which is the world of those that divided, that is to create the soul of man in the world of Beriah, the craftsman then said to the owner of the building, let us make man in our image and after our likeness. The owner of the building said, it is indeed good that man is made, but he shall sin before you because he is foolish. As it is written, a wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is the grief of his mother. Ima said, because his sins are related to Ima and not Abba, I wish to create him in my own image, as it is written. So Elohim created man in his own image. Note that it is not written in our own image because she did not want Abba to have any share in his creation. When Adam sinned, it was written, and for your transgressions was your mother put away. The king who is Abba said to Ema, did I not tell you that he was going to sin? Why did you create him? In that instance, he exiled him and his mother. Therefore it is written, a wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is the grief of his mother. A wise son alludes to the man in the world of Atzilus, and a foolish son alludes to the man in the world of Berea. From this we derive a few things. That the upper worlds are personified as different characterizations and they are operating independently. We see that the Partsufim of Abba is at times working with the Partsufim of Ema, and at other times Ema is wholeheartedly operating and acting independently of Abba. Now Chokmah or Abba is by the name Yud-Ke Vav-Ke, while the name Elohim is a name indicative of the sphere of Bina, or Ema. Therefore we find here that Ema created without Abba, for she did not want Abba to partake of the creation of that man. Everything in the works of creation utilizes the word bara, which hints to the world of Berea, the world of separation. We thus read in Likutei Torah by the Arizal, the Torah does not here speak about the world of Atzilus, but rather about the world of Berea. The Torah in general is therefore called the Torah of Berea. And for this reason, the world of separation was the world of Berea. Therefore, everything that was created during the days of creation attests to the world of Berea, not of the world of Atzilus. That brings us to a furtherance of our question as to the nature of this reality. The world of Atzilus, or emanation, personifies the archetypal emanations. Therefore, an analogy. In the world of Atzilus, personifying to that aspect of Abba, there would be a kelev, a dog. However, that dog would have an entirely spiritual existence. Its existence would be in the quality of chaya, life. It would simply exist, very much to the pattern of dreams that for each person every night, an entire landscape, an entire dream world, a throne unique to their own, is blasted into existence. An example, buildings that were not built and people that weren't birthed. This is the nature of the divine emanatory level. The dog would simply exist. It would not need to eat. It would not need to drink. It would exist archetypally. However, when Ema created without Abba, that is to say, she created without that aspect of life, as it is written, wisdom gives life to its possessor, Ema too created a dog, except the dog that Ema created was entirely flawed. That dog was infused with death. That dog would suffer. That dog would ultimately kill to maintain its existence because its life would come from death. It was intermingled with that quality of death, and therefore it would eat to survive as opposed to sustaining by the light of Chaya. That same dog would also become sickly and obtain diseases and age. All of these things are not prevalent in the archetypal world of emanation. Because Ema created without Abba, this occurred. Now, the divine well here goes much deeper. What needs to be understood here is that, according to the understandings, both Abba and Ema acted within a restricted state, because essentially still, even at this level, everything is still behaving in a way outside of the divine unity, but essentially this is by necessity. For the nature of all of these realms were to introduce these levels of evil. Now, the levels of evil at the highest levels were far more subtler than the nature of evil in the lower manifested realms. We also find that the opposite of an uncreated God is a created God, and this is where all of the understanding of the various dimensions and worlds and Partsufim come into existence, and the reason why they exist. Because they are the exact opposite of an uncreated thing being a created thing. Furthermore, we see that at the highest levels, an example in Atzilus, there is an aspect of evil. We see that also in the world of Berea, there is an aspect of evil. And we see that this evil begins to compound in various stages. Now let us continue into the nature of this world. The Zohar states, which Elohim created and performed. Come and behold, at the time the demons and evil spirits were being created, the day, the Shabbat, an example the seventh day, was being sanctified. The demons and evil spirits were left without bodies because he did not have the time to make them bodies. They are creatures who are not finalized. They come from the left and are considered the refuse of gold. Thus, because they were not finished and remain defective, the holy name cannot rest upon them and they cannot cleave to it. They are terrified of the holy name and sweat with fear upon which it is mentioned. Therefore they cannot cleave to it. Furthermore, the holy name cannot dwell in an imperfect place. This is an amazing statement because we learn here that Elohim rested from the works in which it created, as it is written regarding the seventh day. We learn that creation was incomplete and that there were entities or evil spirits and demons that were brought into existence during this time because he did not have time to make them bodies. This shows us that the acts of creation are vanity and flawed, as it was stated over there in Kohelet. The reason being is because the opposite of an uncreated God is a created God. Therefore it is written, Bereshis bara Elohim, in the beginning created Elohim, which can be in the Peshat rendered, in the beginning Elohim was created. This is also very important to the aforementioned point. What is the opposite of a perfect creator? The answer is a flawed creator. And therefore, we find that this Elohim brought forth an imperfect existence and many other flaws. Now with this key between Elohim and Yud-Kei-Vav-Kei, we find that the name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh is not found in any place during the acts of creation, but only the name Elohim. Also, we need to understand that it was this Elohim that wrestled with Yaakov. For it is written, you have wrestled with Elohim and overcame. Our sages and the Zohar identify Elohim as the minister over Esav, an example, Samael. The Zohar says it was Samael that wrestled with Yaakov, and Samael named himself and called himself by the name Elohim. Therefore, Elohim, which has an ordinal value of 41, is the same ordinal value as Samael. With this, we may have a better understanding as to the nature of this reality and the nature of what's governing over this reality, which is Samael, as has been mentioned before. Now we may enter into the nature of this reality and understand regarding Elohim that it is written, the ground is cursed for your sake, thorns and thistles, pain and suffering. Therefore, we find that Elohim, after exiling the man and garbing him in skin, this word skin describes the descent of a spiritual existence into a material, physical existence. Furthermore, we must also understand that the word skin is also the same word for blindness used in another verse. Thus, what is the opposite of a God that creates things, a God that destroys things? What is the opposite of a God that loves? The answer is a God that curses and hates. And so Elohim has cursed the ground for our sake, and the nature of this ground is entirely cursed because we are under the auspices and dominion of this Elohim, which has made itself into a divine entity in the place of the endless, of which it is not. It is only a created thing, a minister of sorts, beneath the supernal endless. And we, unfortunately, are created by it. Thus, we in ourselves are a product of a created thing, Furthermore, this would be likened to a video game character complaining about its own existence. And when asked what is the purpose of our existence, and the answer is to be cursed and to suffer. This we have in common with an aborted fetus. Us and an aborted fetus have in common that its life and existence was cursed from the very beginning, that it would exist pain and suffering. And so Koheles says, and so I rejoiced in the dead. And in another place, and greater is he who was never born, who never saw the evil underneath the sun. And also, he writes, the great evil which Elohim has given to man to be burdened with. And all of these things were found to be vanity, because here in this reality, we, being a created thing of a created thing, our purpose is to suffer. Our purpose is to experience the curses of this reality. For the ground was cursed by Elohim specifically for us, the human being, that everything we should do should be for nothing, and that all that we should do in life, an example when the woman should conceive, should be in pain and suffering, which can also be seen as analogous to the body. Similarly, in the spirit, everything being futile. And so I spoke to the Buddhist, and he said to me, you must escape the karmic cycles. You must free yourself from the world of samsara, the wheel of reincarnation. And I spoke to a Christian, and they said to me, for you must be saved, for this world is ruled by Satan. And I spoke to a fellow Jew, and they said to me, for we must gather the sparks for the correction of the world. And so I said to all of them, why is the world in need of being corrected? For what reason do you need a Mashiach? What are you being saved from? And why do you need to escape this reality? And behold, all of these things are after the image and not the substance. And all of these things, being after the image and not the substance, is precisely why this world is indentured upon death. For everything here is in the likeness of the divine upper world, as we saw in the case of the dog, as given an example earlier. However, the dog in Atzilus exists by Chaya, eternally. But the dog here is temporary and dies, etc. Such is the nature of this entire reality, for the nature of this reality is to bring about suffering. The nature of this reality is death. Therefore, we must behold the nature of this reality for what it is. Samael is the governing principle of this reality, and he represents bloodshed. Therefore, everything here is sustained by that principle, death and bloodshed. He represents the north, and so our sages said that this world was created through the north, through Gevura. Thus it is written, if you wish to be rich, turn to the north. And what is the fundamental principle of this reality? The answer is money. Everything here is exchanged through money, upheld by war, and we ourselves are just devouring death. And so we find that, and Hashem Elohim formed man of the dust of the ground, of dust and not clay. He is dust, and to dust shall he return, as it is written, for dust you are, and to dust shall you return. After he sinned, it is said of the serpent, and dust shall you eat all the days of your life. This dust is man, of whom it is written, for dust you are. Therefore it is written, dust, not earth or clay, and dust shall be the serpent's food. And this serpent is the secret of the dog, of which a dog returns to its own vomit. And this hints to the material reality, and assuredly the underlying earth, which is the craftsman down below. And so the word Malkuth, as mentioned in Tikkun 26, is the numerical value of Samael HaNechash, or Samael the serpent. Assuredly, this is also the secret of the dog, for the word Kelev, or dog, is a numerical value of 52, hinting to Asiya, the 52 name, which is Malkuth. Malkuth having the numerical value as Samael HaNechash, we thus find that we are here within sight of that. And so it is written, I call heaven and earth was certainly listening. Earth was the great beast down below, of which it says over here in the Zohar. From the top of Atzilus to the resurrection of the dead. Underneath it, a beast of the field strolls, namely Malkuth, which has 10 horns, which are 10 lights. This beast has eyes like human eyes and a mouth that speaks great things. We see here that this great beast with 10 horns refers to Malkuth. And so the word nakedness, which is likened to the word for skin, was the secret of one of the wives of Samael. For we find ourselves in the midst of that thing, that great serpent, that great world serpent that eats dust, an example, eats people, to afflict great suffering, from which it is written, and the earth vomits out the shades of the dead. The word shades is rephaim, for they are refuah, healed, in order to be eaten again. This earth vomiting out the shades is very similar to what is written. A dog returns to its own vomit. Regarding this dog, which returns to its vomit, and the earth which vomits out the shades of the dead, it is only to consume them again, to cause further affliction, further curses, further death, further suffering. Because the opposite of a God that blesses is a God that curses. The opposite of the true God is a false God. The opposite of an uncreated God is a created God. The opposite of a God that gives life is a God that kills. And so this reality is entirely klipothic. Thus, our sages called this world Olam HaSheker, the world of lies. And this lie is seen in other cultures. An example, they call it samsara, which is very similar, a world of illusions, etc. In fact, in many other cultures, we see the same principle at hand. The Christians say Satan rules this world. The Kabbalists say the Yetzer Hara rules the world. The Buddhists show the wheel of reincarnation with a giant red demon swallowing them all. Red is the word Edom, as seen here in this image. And so the Zohar states in Book 1 the following: if you claim that you have no existence or remedy, then who shall heal you? Namely, the same concealed supernal level, which is called Hu, through which everything exists, shall heal and uphold you. If you say you have no existence or remedy, we have no existence because we're a created thing of a created thing. We have no remedy because the entire purpose of our existence is to suffer. Thus, even the Buddhists figured this out. For one of the noble truths, and the first of all noble truths, was that life is suffering. We have no existence because we are a created thing of a created thing. What if the world didn't revolve around the human being? What if all human beings could be gone and the universe continue? In fact, if you removed all of the human beings, where would evil be? For assuredly the ground is cursed for the human beings specifically. And no remedy. No remedy because everything is to be futile. So this brings us into an incredible dilemma, and we find ourselves at the bottom with so many levels, worlds, and things above us that we seem hopeless. However, it was precisely the giving of the Torah that liberated us. For there are two types of people that read the Torah. There are those who read the Torah from a first-person perspective and those who read it from a third-person perspective. When we read it from the first person perspective, it is filled with difficulties, contradictions, and literal simple meanings. However, when we read it from a third person perspective, under the guise of the Sod, which illuminates the Peshat, or the simple meanings, we thus find that the first thing the Holy One, blessed be He, informed us was about the nature of this reality, the nature of our condition here, and what actually happened during the acts of creation. And thereby, through who and the secrets of the underlying illimitable, and the root and mainstay source of the Torah itself, the opportunity to elevate the sparks, to return to the Shorosh, or root of the supernal Neshama, which is connected through that holy Torah, to that place of the Chaya, to the Atzil, of which it was hinted to in the words, I will praise you from the land of the living. Land refers to Malchut, or the kingdom, and living is wisdom gives life to its possessor. This was the archetypal Atzil, the land of life, the world of the living. Hence it is written, and I will give to you the land I will show you. Sight is the level of Atzilus as well. Thus it is imperative on the individual to illuminate and uplift the underlying spark inside of every single being, to connect it to its supernal root so that it may ascend beyond the nature of this reality at death. And so it was written, some dreams are 70 years. This hints to this life from which our sages said is like a dream. It is more like a nightmare. And in another place our sages said that life begins at death. That is because this reality is horridly flawed, but it is horridly flawed by its design. And ministers, and not the illimitable, is in control here. Because what is the opposite of being in control of everything? The answer is not being in control of everything. Therefore, we have free will and choice, but that also means that the things above us do as well. For it is precisely in the hands of ministers and other things that govern this reality. We must understand that we are under the auspices of things, and those things have deemed for us to suffer. That is our condition. What is the purpose of the human being? To be cursed, to suffer, and to die. We were never promised love. We were never promised truth to be cared about. We were never promised virtue, belonging. And this indeed is what we have in common, even with an aborted fetus. An aborted fetus was never promised love, the love of its parents, truth, virtue, but it received the true nature of this reality. The ground is cursed for your sake is what is written. Pain and suffering, thorns and thistles, vanity and worthlessness. Therefore, you should see the importance of the light being illumined now at this time, and why I am calling for world peace, and for us to behold the underlying illimitable. Because we have no existence, we have no remedy outside of it. There is no other cure. Perhaps there will be a part 2. These matters are beyond the scope of one video. Shalom, Selah.